All right. Hey, guys. Let me get Mark unmuted here. Mark, did I send you the unmute request?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep, I'm unmuted.
Wonderful. Guys,
Hurrah.
so good to see you guys. We're really excited to be with you today. I'm Ramon Osa, my business partner, Mark Jeffrey. And what we're going to talk about today is getting you guys the edge in those tight 50-50 matches. Because we all know that, those tight matches come down to a few points. The best players in the world win 54% of points. So we're talking about a small swing in getting those critical, decisive, pressure-packed points. And that's what we're going to give you today in this training. We're going to do questions and answers in between at the end. We're just going to kind of guide this along because we all have things to do today. So we want to make sure we give you guys the most training possible. But if you have any questions so that we can answer later, if you could put them down in the chat, we'll be happy to answer those sort of as we go along. So again, I'm Ramon Osa, my business partner, Mark Jeffrey, who's an Army tennis champion and really distilled how the elite military train ordinary humans to become extraordinary under the greatest of pressures, brought that training to tennis, and there's nothing like it out there. So Mark, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure doing these with you. And why don't you take it away and let us know what we're up for today.
Fabulous. Thank everybody for spending their precious time on a Saturday, wherever you are in the world. Ramon and I work very well. He's the good cop, I'm the bad cop. He's the nice guy, and people say to me, Mark, why do you shout and be so military? 14 years of my life spent there. So let me just introduce what we're about today and give you plenty of time to ask questions or debate things as we go along. Having said that, we just want to keep within the timescales. So we're going to have to play it by ear as we go, and this is very informal. No slides, no music, no dry ice.
There may be a few yelps from the poodle over here if somebody rings on our doorbell, but other than that, really laid back.
So the first thing is it's good timing that it comes after Wimbledon, because you will note, and if you haven't noted when I say it, you go, yes, they do say that. The closer it gets towards the finals of the Grand Slams, everyone, as in the analysts, the commentators, the former players, in any language around the world, whether radio or TV, will start harping on about the person that wins is the person that will be able to handle the pressure. These matches will all be decided by a few critical points. This legendary big point player. And no one ever says that, as apart from Billie Jean King, pressure is a privilege. Nobody ever says pressure is your best friend. It can drive you to your heights and play as a big point player. And no one ever says, and here is how you, my friend, can train to be a big point player, which is the mission that I took up and then handed the baton over to Ramon. And I thought it was going to take me 4 months because I've been addicted to tennis since the age of 4. Yes, Army tennis champion, singles and doubles, played at Wimbledon on the grass courts a month after the big tournament against the RAF and the Navy. Did that for altogether now in my life, probably 24 years, but did it 12 years on the bounce. So I knew my way around the court. But I was like everybody else, which is you don't get trained for the big points. You do your best, you'll react, you're mentally tough, you fight through it and you do your best. But we all know there's a game within a game. So just to set the scene, in our book, there are 3 types of pressure, and we start from the end, the few closing out points, and work backwards. So the first type of pressure is external pressure that whooshes all over you. You can't do anything about it. That's the first type of pressure. And that's what we train for. How to welcome it, how to harness it, how to go into our processes, how to execute on autopilot And in the way of doing that, we have shifted behaviorally and identity to be a big point player, to be a Djokovic at our age and level. As I was going through that, because I thought it was going to take 4 months and it took nearly 5 years of research, development, testing, and simplification. As I was going through all that, I was thinking, this is an awful lot of work to do for a few critical points. Yes, they're closing out points, games, sets, and matches, but once we are trained to love pressure and perform at our best, now, according to Brad Gilbert, which I would agree with, that 50% of the points in a match are big points. At 30-all, 30-40 or 40-30 in the next point are big points. You've just broken serve, they're big points. You've just won the first set, the next one's a big point. So he thinks 50% of points in a match are big points. So if we're trained with external pressure, now the next level of training is to self-generate internal pressure, which is not the same. It's not the same intensity as external pressure, but it's good. And that can then trigger the training. So those are 50% of the points. And then the rest of the points, let's say they're 45% of the points in the match, is match pressure. So when you step across the white lines onto the match court, obviously the match court feels different from the practice court. It looks smaller than the practice court. The net's a bit higher than the practice court. So you've got a little bits of pressure. And we don't expect people to get into flow and do everything that we do for pressure, but nevertheless, we can do our processes. So bearing in mind those 3 types of pressure, it's quite common. By no means is it everybody has it, but it's quite common for people that have been losing 6-4, 7-5 consistently against people, within a few short months are winning 2-1 against the same people. Because they just say, Mark, it was a tough match. I just happened to win the big points in most of the games.
Mark, real quick, I want to just jump in and ask you guys listening, just what that feeling for you is when you're in those tight matches, when you're serving to close out, when you're trying to break, or maybe you're facing a break point. Just genuinely, because for me, it was always, I was in a doubles match to win the intramurals, and the girl that I was trying to impress and ultimately date was in the stands, and I was so nervous, and I thought to myself, oh my God, I'm in no position here. I don't have the technique that these guys do. I'm not as fit as these guys. And ultimately, I double faulted 2 points in a row and blew the match, lost our team the match. I'm just curious what your sort of thoughts and feelings are when you're going into those big moments, and what you notice sort of going through your head. Just genuinely curious. If you'd put that in the chat, I think that would give us some great conversation. So put that in the chat, how you feel in those big moments, and we'll get to those in a bit.
Great. So just to sum up what I was talking about the edge. So the question is, if you knew you played your best in this area of uncertainty, and if you were trained and loved pressure and you had processes, it seems a stupid question, but would that give you the edge in a 50-50 match, expect to and probably close out? And I'll put my glasses on and read the comments.
Yeah, so Shendil says he feels tentative, lots of chatter in the head. Shendil, thank you so much for sharing that. That's I think a lot of us resonate with that. Sharad says, I try to feel tense, but try to relax. Yeah, the try is one of those words Mark and I are always joking about. That's one of the shifts that we make in getting you the edge, is really being meticulous with what you say to yourself. GB says, in doubles, I generally either overthink while I'm trying to focus, or I space out while trying to be calm. Yeah, absolutely. Adrian, nervous. thinking to not double fault. Yeah. Yep. Adrian, I know exactly how you feel. And it's
And if you,
amazing how as soon as you think that thought, invariably, there goes the double fault, which is what happens.
if anybody plays golf, it's the same thing. There's a bunch of water in a lake in front of you when you're about to tee off, and the brain goes, "Don't hit it in the lake."
Yeah. Yep.
Sposh.
Cool.
Okay,
Thanks
all
for
very
sharing
good stuff. And we all know, just before we go on into some of the training and just check in with you, we all know that we play our very best tennis when we don't think, when we don't analyze, and we just allow the brain and body to do what the brain and body does well. And it's only under pressure, which is like risk and danger and fear, do we revert back to caveman times where we have to be stiff and fight, because if we don't, we get eaten. So a stiff fighter and being mentally tough doesn't help you. In fact, it's hindrance, but Muhammad Ali, loose and relaxed with an assassin brain, does help you. Or you flight, you mentally get out of here, or you freeze with mind and body. And we've all been through those, I'm sure. So when we sum up all the training, it's to get you out of fight, flight, and fear and be in loose and mentally assassin type of situation.
Yep. So I think that can lead us right in nicely, Mark, to the meat of this training. And what we want to give you guys today is really a framework of how you can go out and think about training in a new way that'll give you that edge. And the first thing we want to talk about today is the tactics. Okay, so we're Mark and I are big fans of the 80-20 principle, which is basically that says 20% of the things that you do in life get you 80% of the results. And it is a fundamental law of nature. Everything pretty much abides by this. So when it comes to tactics, the first thing we got to understand is, 70% of the points. I think we got Harlan, if you could mute yourself. Not sure how you got. Anyway, sorry, we got a little bit of static on the line. Let me see if I can quickly. Mark, can you kick this off, and I'll see if I can get rid of the sound?
Yeah, sure. So the first 80-20, and we have to work that way. And in fact, one of the challenges of creating the trust method and the training was how to deselect all sorts of amazing stuff, but doesn't necessarily give you immediate results. So you're left with the bare minimum. So what you're getting today is the bare minimum, but it will still get you great results. So the first 80-20 on tactics is that if I ask you questions and you put it in the chat box, but I will crack on because of time, instead of spending 90% of our time on 10% of the points, and 10% of the points are 9 shots and more. So when I travel around the world to tennis clubs around the world, I see everybody doing the same thing, which is feed the ball into play and run around, mainly at the baseline, grooving their backhands and forehands, getting a sweat up, which is great. Ball breaks down, feed the ball, and away we go again. Well, and if they're doing that for fun and sweat, that's brilliant. If they're doing it because they want to replicate a match situation, there's only 10% of the points in these long rallies. And it always deceives the eye, even when people talk about Djokovic. He's equal or slightly worse when it comes to long rallies. So the stats are, what is the most common rally length in singles? If you can just think about that and put it in the chat box. The most common rally length in singles. And these stats are from Grand Slams, ATP, college, club, and juniors. They follow a very similar statistical trend. So the answer is the most common rally length is 1. 30% of points are won with 1 shot, which is clearly the serve. So you either get an unforced error, you force an error, or you get an ace. So if ask you now, what is the second most common rally length? Just think, put it in the chat box, just what occurs to you. And the second most common rally length is 3 shots. And that accounts for 15% of the points. So when you add your serve and your next shot, 45% of the points are there. And as it happens, the returner serve and the next shot are 25% of the points. So if you add what's called the serve +1 and the returner serve +1, within those are 70% of the points. So if we don't have much time, and many of us don't, we ought to be honing those 2 tactics. And we'll come into the, well, how do we train the repetition part to execute the tactics in a little bit later. So that's that. We would all spend then majority of our time doing just that. And then the next statistic is the 5 to 8 pattern of play.
Oh, Mark, real quick.
Yeah.
So 70% of the points, is that right, are between 0 and 4 shots?
Between 1 and 4 shots, yeah.
Yep. So that's, Mark was talking about how we spend loads and loads of time rallying and grooving ground strokes from the baseline, but it's really the serve +1 and the return +1, which is becoming more and more sort of in style, that we need to be focusing on if we're going to start winning those tight matches. So we need a shift to give you the edge to really training those first 2 shots of a point.
And within that, clearly we've got targets to aim for, and the repetition makes that happen. So then the second stat is the 5 to 8 shot pattern of play, which intuitively we would think, yeah, that's where the majority of the points are. But actually there's only 20% of the points there. And we have 2 tactics. One is the disruption of the baseline to baseline rally. And we can do that either from the juice or the ad court by either pushing them back another 5 meters or so from the baseline, or dragging them through and past the alley. Either way, the court is now opened up for a hurting shot, not a winning shot, because going for winners is a bit of a mugs game, because we know that most of the points in tennis come from errors, forced or unforced errors. So the name of the game is make no unforced errors yourself and have tactics that will force errors. The last tactic within the 5 to 8 is the combat situation about the approach shot and put away volley smash against the passing shot or lob. And the passing shot would also set up what we call a fear hand rather than a forehand. So those are the tactics. And the only thing that changes when we go to the endurance, the +9, is that if we are on the receiving end of the rally, like the other person is in charge, we would train from the forehand or the backhand side a rising deep ball that goes down the middle that resets play. And all we're trying to do in a long rally is to do the disruption of the baseline, open up the court, do a hurting shot, and possibly then carry on with the approach shot and volley. So those are the tactics. So in singles, there are basically 4 tactics to learn repetitively. And in doubles, the stats are even more acute. I don't have numbers, but if it's 70% of the points and 1 in 4 shots or less in singles, it must be 75 to 80% of points in doubles do that. And the 5 to 8 pattern of play would probably be the remaining 20%, and there'll be hardly any, if any, points that have 9 shots or more. So the ability now to finish off points, not by winning, but by forcing and or waiting for an unforced error, is where it's at. And that's what Djokovic and Nadal and Federer and others have trained over the last few years to win points quickly. I think in Wimbledon, the average point length throughout was 4.3 shots. I think it was something like that. So our eyes deceive us on the long rallies. So the question then is, if you switched your training from running around practicing grooving backhands and forehands, but focused on the 1 to 4 shots, and then focused on the 5 to 8 shots, leaving the 9 shots to last, because you've got to go through the 5 to 8 and the 1 to 4 before you have a long rally, and you became confident and honed in that, would that give you an edge in a 50-50 match?
What do you guys think? If you put that down in the chat, what if you started training totally differently and started really honing in just that one thing of really getting into the 0 to 4 shots, the serve +1, and then those tactics that Mark's talking about is disrupting the baseline to baseline rally, not getting into those wars of attrition? What would that do for you? I'd love to hear what you think down in the chat. Yes, it will give an edge. Yep, absolutely, Sharad. So I guess that takes us right into how do we actually train this? And that takes us into the repetition element of this, because we can have the best ideas in our head and we can watch loads of videos and read books, but unless we go out and actually train this and rep it, it doesn't become part of just what you do naturally. So that starts with the serve. So Mark brilliantly said this, every point starts with a serve. Mark, another one of your genius.
No. I'm going for a Nobel Mathematics Prize or something, yes.
But it's true. It's true. So as Mark said, the first job of the serve is always to get the ball in, right? That's job number 1, to start the point. Next, we got to get into the direction. So starting to aim for certain targets, then precision, hitting those targets smaller and smaller and smaller, being able to hit those targets with a variety of eventually spins and increasing power. And we want to do that in that order. I think a lot of people get infatuated with serve power and hitting massive kick serves and all this. But unless you're hitting the targets reliably and predictably and really setting up your next shot, which is hopefully going to be your forehand, then a lot of the stuff that you're doing is not as effective as it could be. Is if you're thinking of the serve as now 2 shots, where the serve is always to set up the forehand in singles or the volley, the second volley in doubles. And you see Nadal, I mean, he hits that serve and he's hitting a forehand from his backhand corner. And there's a reason that he does that, is because he really has that forehand, as Mark says, has turned it into a fear hand. It's another English saying that I don't know if a lot of us.
No, I actually invented it. How about that? Well, I think I did. I don't remember stealing it from anybody else.
Trademarked.
Okay. I just want to pick up one question just as we go along. One thing in the chat, which is, yeah, we agree with that, but we can't find anybody that wishes to practice it. So 2 things. There are a variety of reasons why people play tennis. Social, yes. Fitness, yes. Competitively, but recreational tennis players aren't necessarily playing tennis because they want to win. They're playing it because it's social. So that there aren't that many that play tennis because they want to compete and they want to win. That's really the first thing. So if they're not keen on winning, it's pointless trying to get them to train winning, because that's not what they're there for. So you do need to sift who wants to. And although it's a little outside of the scope of this, we do have a training program. We will introduce it at the end, because the quickest, most effective, cheapest way of you shifting is if we can train you. And as you will find out later, we insure against your losses. So if you don't win, we pay you back. So Ramon, I just want to answer this question of how do people train? Because your 11-year-old daughter, 12-year-old daughter, 10-year-old daughter?
11. Going on 16.
Trained you.
Yeah.
So what we will get away from is needing somebody of your own standard on the opposite baseline drilling you. And we will get into it in a little bit more detail. But as Ramon said, target-driven serves. Our targets tend to be a little bit over the sideline of the alley. Why? Is to decondition you of fear of the white line and get you aiming for small targets with a lot of area that is out, rather than large targets with a small area that is in. And so direction, precision of first bounce, and consistency are the three key things. And once you've got some mastery of that, then, as Ramon says, we can introduce power, spin, and variety. Most people train power and possibly spin, but they haven't got the foundations of direction, consistency, and precision. So that is one thing to say. And then the second thing which Ramon got into is that we train as two-shot combinations. The military train in two-shot combinations. Boxers train two-shot combinations. And you'll find out a little bit later on, mentally and emotionally, and with things called myelin and flow, how training as two-shot combination is amazing. Rather than do something, wait to see what they're going to do, react, get there as best as you can, probably a little bit late, improvise a shot that you haven't trained, and then we go on again. So Ramon, perhaps you can just tell your story, because we've never met, we've never been on court, how you trained with your daughter.
Yeah, guys, so I grew up as a doubles player, mostly because I always thought to myself I was too slow, I was too overweight, I got started too late, wasn't a good enough athlete, and all that stuff. And I got into, obviously, my YouTube channel, started making videos, and Mark reached out to me and he said, I've got this amazing training program that has never been done before. It's revolutionary. And as a marketer, you know, I've heard that story.
Always underselling.
Yeah, right. And so, you know, I thought, okay, well, this guy seems pretty sure of himself. He's very sincere. I'll check it out and see if it's something I can help him with. And I went through the training and immediately knew that it was different than anything that I'd ever seen. And so as a good consultant and marketer, I said, the best way to do this is put it to the test. And like I told you, I was a doubles player my whole life. And I said, well, the ultimate test for me would be go out and enter a singles league and then immediately start to train the singles tactics, because I had never really done that before. Yeah, I've coached, I've played at a pretty good level, but I'd never had any aspirations to be a singles player. So the problem was, you know, I didn't have a hitting pro to come out and hit with. And, you know, my wife's full-time real estate doing that all the time. So my daughter would come out and actually help train me. And so with these two-shot combinations, she would just hand feed me a second ball so I could practice my serve +1, my backhand, you know, defensive shots, my return to serve, everything she could do. So you don't need a hitting partner at your level to go out and do this training. Long story short, I entered the league, the World Team Tennis League, as a singles player, went undefeated in the league against players right around my level, or in some cases slightly better. Loads of tight matches, but it always came down, like we talked about at the beginning, to those few big points. So this training is for anybody who wants to quickly, and I mean quickly, 30 days I did this training, went into the league, off we go. And we've had loads of people that we'll tell you about later that have done similar things. So yeah, that's my story. The training is absolutely amazing when you start to shift, giving you focus on the first two shots in a point, spending a disproportionate amount of your training time on those two shots. Like Mark said, the direction, the precision, the consistency, and finally the power and the spin and the variety. Nailing your second ball, that'll give you an edge that will quickly start winning you more matches.
Yeah, and I know it's not necessarily social, but you can do the serve by yourself, and we've got, everything is gamified, so there are points of winning, points of scoring, and points lost for losing. So you can do the serve by yourself, the return of serve you can do by a ball machine, and your run around forehand +1 into the backhand cage you can do with a ball machine.
And if
So
you've
I
got
don't want you to away. You don't need a great partner or a coach on the other end of the baseline. That's all.
and if you had a Billie Jean King eye coach, you can train all this from home by yourself.
Good. Return a serve then. We've done the serve and I distracted you and come back. So return a serve, least practice shot in all of tennis.
Yeah, I had a mentor, guys, that said that the return of serve was the most important shot in tennis. You'll see great servers that are very good players, but you'll never find a great player. And we talk about Djokovic, Federer, Nadal, Serena Williams, all these really amazing players. You won't find one of them that doesn't have a great return to serve. But we don't practice it, right? If we do practice it, it's in a match situation. We're really in fight or flight mode. We're trying to get the ball back and scurry to the next point. But being really intentional about the return of serve, as Mark said, training with targets and training it as the first of a two-shot combination is a massive game changer. So if all you did was go out and say, hey, I'm going to train with you today. You got a similarly skilled player or player with a serve that is like you're going to see in a match. And all you did was go out and actually be intentional about your return to serve. What would that do for you? I mean, how many balls would you get in play more if you just started training the return to serve? And we have a very systematic way of training the return. It's very progressive. We start in the alley, and we use the alley because the court is not the court. The court is a series of alleys. And if you can hit the ball consistently into targets in the alley, now you can go out and sort of in your mind superimpose that alley across the court, and you have the ability to hit any target on the court. So training the serve and the return in the alley can absolutely help you do that. Did I miss anything there, Mark?
No, but we've talked about two-shot combinations. We've talked about the alley being our best friend, 4'6", 78 feet. And I'm not sure this is an English made-up word. Can you talk them through the two types of chunking that we also use?
Yes. Okay, so chunking, guys, is the idea of taking one skill and really breaking it down into super small pieces. And so what we do with chunking is first starting in slow motion on every single swing, because when you practice the precise movements that you're going to need with the proper fundamentals to go out and execute that skill, and you can do it in slow motion, you build this stuff called myelin, which is a wrapping around the brain that allows faster transmission of signals from your brain to your muscles. So you build muscle memory, and you build the ability to execute that skill at faster and faster speeds by starting in slow motion.
Yeah.
So
and it's the hardest, sorry, Ramon, it's the hardest thing to do, to hit the ball consistently as slow as you can. But the benefits are is that you can self-calibrate yourself. So if it doesn't happen going to the target in the alley, you can, because it's slow enough, calibrate yourself.
Yeah.
And then, like laser locked missile, once you've got it, now you can speed up. And then the other thing is taking your hand down the throat, down the handle to the throat, so it becomes an easier shot. Again, laser locked, get it to the hand. So now by the time we go onto the baseline, hand in the proper handle, doing it at full speed, you are already locked on. So those are, I think, our three key differences in training repetition.
Yep. Guys, any questions about this stuff so far? We've been yammering on for a while.
Yeah.
Just want to check in with you. How's this sounding to everybody? You guys like the idea of training your tactics and really training the repetition of those tactics? And as Mark said, starting slow. Go slow through your forehand and your backhand, your serve, everything slow motion first. And what he said about moving the hand down the handle, if you try this next time you go out to the court, start at the top of the handle and work on a shot, like let's say your forehand to a specific target, and notice how much more control you have when you're going slow, you're at the top of the handle, and then gradually moving back, moving further away from the target, moving down the handle, and then gradually, once you've got that speeding up, you're going to notice that your ability to hit the target improves dramatically faster than if you were just to start from the back and just whack away at the ball. So Ryan says, it's very good. Thanks, Ramon and Mark. Ryan, hello to you in Australia. It's like,
oh my goodness me, what time of day is it there?
it's like 2 a.m. And Ryan, you got kids. Thank you so much for joining us. Cool. So that takes us to phase 3, guys. I'm sorry, step 3, which is really the difference that makes the difference. And that is, this is going to sound a little woo-woo, but it's your identity. It's what you think about yourself. It's who you know yourself to be. And, a lot of high performers talk about this, but how do you train that in the context of tennis? And again, the identity is sort of like your self-image and what you think about yourself and what you know yourself to be capable of, but it's also like a glass ceiling. So when you get into those big moments, like when I was in my doubles match and I had this concept in my head that I wasn't a great athlete, I didn't have a big serve, all that stuff, that inevitably led me to blow the match and lose the girl. So my story now is totally different. And that's one of the things that we work with a lot on with our players is shifting that story that you tell yourself. And we got a couple examples we'll share with you later. But it's so important to wrap this sort of personal development stuff into the training while we're training the 2-shot combinations repetitively with pressure, that we gradually and also subliminally and subconsciously shift you into a new identity and a new story that's going to allow you to go out and execute the next time you get into the big moments.
So let me just chip in.
Yep.
So the identity is clearly, and we've obviously researched it a lot. So the identity, and I keep coming back to Djokovic just because I admire him, but Barty and Williams and the rest, they share similar characteristics: hunger, obsessiveness, openness, growth, integrity. In our words, would be meticulous with your word, belief, and other identity things. And the whole part of this training is that in an area of uncertainty, hence doubt, hence nervousness, you know that you will find a way to win, even though a way is not visible. So the simplest thing that you can try out off court and on and catch yourself, because in an area where nobody knows what's going to happen, our normal reflex is to say, I will try. I will try. I'll do my best. I aim to. I intend to. And that already gives your brain an exit for when it doesn't succeed, because you didn't say you would. So get into the habit of all the time of saying, I will. Because there are only 2 things, I will or I won't. So I will. Now, the more that you practice the 4 tactics, the 2-shot combinations, there's about 8 things to practice. The more you do that, the more you're reliable, the more you trust it, the more you will say, I will. Not I will win this point, but I will do this on the serve. I will do this on the return of serve. And the more that you do these patterns, the more your DNA picks up the patterns from your opponent. So the more you can now do a 1-2 shot combination in your sleep rather than the reacting. So I will is a massive identity training, and it's one of the few that we do. There you go, Ramon. I couldn't resist myself.
that was so good, Mark. So good. Yeah, it's what the beauty part of this, guys, is you go out and you do the training, and as you give yourself that command that Mark's talking about, I will, you hit your targets and you gradually increase pressure. We have 9 layers of simulated pressure that we use in training, so that training actually becomes harder over time than what you're going to find in a match. So the more you see yourself and feel yourself executing in those increasingly hard levels of pressure, when you get to the match, you built real belief and confidence in your ability to go out and do that. So, and you're facing a guy who's not trained probably, and you're facing a guy who does have doubt and doesn't have processes in place between points, which that's another topic maybe for another webinar, but we have a 25-second process that we train that immediately strips out everything that happened in the last point, good or bad, gives you the ability to go out and visualize how the next point's going to play out because you've trained it, and then get yourself into flow or the zone on command every single time. So
we can do that in our thoughts, feelings, and emotions, but just to go back to identity, if you knew you could honor your promise to yourself and train belief in other things, as Ramon has said from the very beginning, shots and movement are your entrance ticket to the pressure and big points. But identity, when everything is equal, is your exit ticket. If you were be able to train your identity, do you think it will give you an edge in a 50-50 match? And anybody got any comments on identity or what we would call self, your inner story? In fact, does anybody have an inner story while we're chatting into the chat box? When you come under pressure, as I always used to do you say to yourself, oh, you know what happens next, Mark? Because you've been here before. This is trauma. You are an idiot. You always shank these points. It was easier to get it into court than to do what you did. Do anybody have all these or more? I'd love to know what your recurring story is.
Yeah, my story was always, I'm not fast enough. I'm not, a good enough athlete. We trained a national champion who is now a national champion in her age group, who picked up tennis after being away for 27 years, while everybody else at her level was competing and training and practicing. And her story was she was a mental midget. Dr. Aaron Boynton, who's actually part of our team. And she said that's the biggest transformation that she noticed, was her ability to change her story and through the training go out and create a new story, which is what allowed her to beat her rival 6-1, 6-2 in the final, which was amazing.
Yeah, 30 days, 1 week's training, national champion, first time ever. So before we move on, because we really want to get you guys to engage, because if you've got specific things, we can nail them here and now.
So Adrian says he always, or she, I'm sorry, Adrian, it could be either. I always criticize myself or my body, feet, arms in a match. Yeah, no, damn it, why'd you hit the ball there? Moving so slow, I was lazy on that one. It's so common, guys. It happens all the time. I get so tight, Frank. Yep, absolutely. Thank you for sharing.
And we're going to save pressure for last, because this is what pressure does. Can you describe your body, your arms and legs, and why you berate yourself? What happens there?
So Adrian, when you're criticizing yourself or your body, kind of what's going on in your head? I'm just genuinely curious, because the more we understand what you guys are going through, the better we can help you through this training. So love to hear what you think down in the comments. So I think that leads us, Mark, into...
No, we're going to get you to briefly, quickly, because I'm conscious of time, go through our ability to control our thoughts, feelings, and emotions rather than be controlled by them, because this is a key thing that gives you an edge.
Yep. So the key, guys, is we all know it's what happens in the 80% of your match when the ball's not in play that really matters. And at a similarly skilled level, obviously, if you're playing someone much better or much worse than you can get away with, sort of the thoughts, feelings, and emotions not being under control. But when you're in those tight matches and you're against a similarly skilled player, The player who's going to go out and execute is the player that handles the thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So we teach a 25-second process in between points that allows you, I mentioned earlier, to get in the zone and forget about what happened on the last point. We've got these series of two-shot combinations that are like Legos that you link together to form points. So serve +1, then you're going into either approach shot, volley, smash, or neutralize, set up, and hurt. So now you've got a way through a very pointed point of focus at every point in a match where there's no chance for those thoughts to come in because you're so clear about where you are in the process. So becoming, and you hear this is a cliche, but it's true, the more process oriented you are and the less results oriented you are, the more detached you are from the outcome as opposed to being attached to winning and losing, the more it frees you into playing your best in those big moments. Got some great comments here. So Frank says his chest gets tight, breathing gets hard, then the arm and legs don't want to move. Adrian, when I miss hit, I know my timing is off, and I know that this timing is off because I was a slight second too late to the ball. So then I blame my feet. And we would argue you're probably not slow at all. It's probably the thinking virus got in. You started thinking about maybe what your coach told you, or where you're going to hit the ball, and you weren't in flow. So it's totally not your fault. Phil,
so we're going to nail some of those next. But go on with Phil.
So Phil says the game plan is to aim at safe targets. During play,
Yep.
I go for too much.
Okay. Good. Hopefully you're going to try and nail this right now. So we have a number of mentors. I have a Kung Fu master that's been a Kung Fu master for 28 years, handed down by his master that was handed down by his master. It goes right back to 1000 BC. And he said early on to me, winning or losing is like having a cup of tea, Mark. And I know, no, Sifu Matthew, you don't understand. I have to roar like a lion. This is the Colosseum out there. I have to tell my opponent, I will fight you by the death and eat your Adam's apple out. So I roar. And he goes, well, why do you do that, Mark? Because you're sucking oxygen from the brain that needs it. You're wasting energy from the muscles that needs it. And for a savvy opponent, you're shrieking to him, I don't really believe I'm covering this up with bravado. So why do you do that? And I go, no. And it took me 2 years to get that winning or losing really is like having a cup of tea. The process is everything. Anybody got any comments for that before we now go into pressure, which is the elephant in the room, that what nobody talks about? We're going to spend 5 minutes on pressure. So if you can look out for the chat, Ramon. So a few things on pressure. Everybody says it's bad, and the more you hear it's bad, the more it reinforces the myth that it's bad. And even myself, he says that he's dedicated years, both in and out of the military, digging into what this thing called pressure, until recently was keep talking about winning under pressure and reinforcing to myself that pressure is bad because it's under you and you've got to fight through it. So we just recently changed that to be winning with pressure. So if you don't know what pressure is, you don't know why it invades your mind, body, and soul. If you never train under simulated pressure and see yourself doing amazing stuff, the only time you encounter pressure is when you need the point the most. And at these areas, it is like trauma. So when you're in there, the brain wants to stop the pain as soon as possible and will tell you whatever it tells you, but normally it's not helpful. And you've only got to do this, you've only got to shank under pressure twice for our pattern generating, meaning making machine to carry on forever. So you would now think, well, I don't play well under pressure and whatever, and that's probably true. So when you do win, you kind of think it's luck or your opponent gave it to you. So if there was training about pressure, that you knew what it was, you knew why it invaded mind, body, and soul, that you trained under simulated conditions every single shot of an hour and a half's coaching, when pressure came to you, it'd be your friend in a match, and you would really have an unfair competitive advantage. So that's the first thing just to say. The second thing to say, that under pressure, so you know, is probably, not probably, is the world's biggest legal chemical cocktail injected into your neurosystem. Adrenaline, testosterone, cortisol, dopamine, and many more are dumped in. So if you don't know what's happening, it will overwhelm and frighten you. But most of these drugs give you extraordinary things. Your eyesight becomes very acute. Your pattern prediction is really quick. You have more energy, oxygen to your brains and the muscles. It gives you everything you need actually to get into flow. One of the magic carpet rides into flow is risk and danger and fear. And I had the privilege of interviewing Stephen Kotler a few years ago, that wrote The Rise of Superman, co-founder of the Human Genome Institute, researched extreme athletes for 10 years, and I learned a lot from him. So pressure, the ability to quickly go into flow, comes in the same thing. I suppose another stat to know is that under pressure, information from the other side comes to you quicker, but it's flawed. So instead of all the information arriving at the same time, if you make a decision, it's slightly out. It's called the refractory. So this is like three burly men trying to open a big oak door, and their shoulders go on the door slightly out, door stays still. All put it on the same time, doors open. So this all goes into why pressure makes us feel nervous and tight, because it's our body's reaction, and makes us slow. And particularly if we are going to shank and miss hit shots, why we will do it under pressure. So the first thing is the information comes to you quicker but flawed. Second thing is, unless we're trained, we will be in caveman time with trying to protect ourselves. So using our conscious and mechanical part of our brain to kind of dictate our movements freeze frame by freeze frame. So our movement is not fluid. When we get to hit the ball, we're not relaxed and hitting through the ball. We are freeze frame by freeze frame, so we don't make a mistake. So now understand how many bits per second of information the brain is trying to process, of picking up where the opponent hit the ball, what height above the net, where's the first bounce got to be, how much power, what spin, moving our body to get there, and then even more info per second of controlling every single muscle and ligament from our toes to our tips of our fingers to hit the ball. This is millions of bits of information per second we are processing. So if we're in mechanical mode, processing at 50 to 100 bits per second, there's going to be overload. If we can be trained to use intuitive self and processing information up to 14 million bits per second, then we'll perform well. So those are some of the things about pressure. And I think in this time, all we can leave you with is that pressure is a privilege. We can become addicted to it, the chemicals of being in pressure. And then if we win, we get the winner's euphoria as a second hit. And if we lose, we obviously get the loser's depression as a downer. So this whole area is really quite addictive. So if we know what's happened to us, and we can now create a story of our new best friend, train under pressure every single time we hit the ball in training, because we are gamified, and start producing this thing called myelin with two-shot combinations, we will be perfectly placed when the push and shove, when the vinegar moments happen in a match, to process and kick on. So I suppose the final thing to say is that just like in the military, we train tactics, the ability to execute the tactics, flushing out and training of your identity, the controlling of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions, all at the same time in training under pressure. So when it comes to a match, we have automatically shifted and execute without thinking. What did they say in that chapter in the book about gratitude? And when the wolves are howling in your brain, you do not think about what the training is. You either do it or you don't do it. Does that make sense? And if you were that person, a big point player, do you think that would give you an edge to turn a 50-50 match into a 55-45? Pressure is where it's at. Everything else goes for a run under pressure.
Yep.
All the good intentions, all the training yourself, all the belief, all the I've improved my serve, it all goes to pot under pressure, with pressure. Anybody got any comments on that before Ramon? So, conclusion, I hope you've got some value, some ahas today and something you put into practice. We would love the privilege of training with you and being accountable with you and getting you to have these game-changing and life-changing things. So Ramon's going to spend 5 minutes or so on what it is and give you a choice. And if you'd like to come with us, that would be fabulous. And if you don't, it's still fabulous for you to have shared some time on a Saturday with us. And I hope you had some fun and got some real value out of it.
Yeah, guys, thank you for being on this call today, and would love to hear what you thought about what we've done with you so far, sort of the ahas that you have. If you just put one thing in the chat that you learned today, and how you're going to go out and implement it, that would be great.
Yes.
So as Mark said, we would love the opportunity to train with you and really take you by the hand and show you how this training actually works. And what it looks like is it's a 30-day program. And unlike basically anything that I've ever seen, we're training with you virtually the entire time. So we've got a series of videos to watch each day. So 2 to 3 videos on average, usually between 15 and 20 minutes. And then some of this is going to be knowledge-based. It's going to be about really explaining the tactics and why it works and why we're going to train it. And then videos on how to actually progressively train each of those tactics. And then, as Mark said, the games that we create, the layers of pressure, everything with the execution of those, how you can train this at home if you got an iCoach. Then we've also got 2 amazing members of our team that aren't here today. One is Robert Carlbo, who is a master of tennis, who's forgotten more about tennis than most of us will ever know. And he is there to really help you with your strokes, your execution of the tactics, and any questions that you have regarding tennis in general. The guy knows everything. Then we've got Dr. Aaron Boynton, who is a board-certified orthopedic surgeon. So if you've got any little injuries or anything, or you're worried about certain things that are going on in your body, she has worked with the WTA. She's worked with the Toronto Blue Jays. She can answer any questions that you have, and has a free app actually that'll help you get your body into a progressively younger state. So that's the team. That's who's going to be there with you. As I mentioned, 2 to 3 videos on average each of the days. We have a WhatsApp group where you can go in and upload your videos of your training, where you get direct feedback from Mark and me and Aaron and Robert. Ask any questions that you have. And probably the best part is the community that is created with this. So you've got people that are going through the exact same thing who are just like you. And you get to share your experiences, your wins, your challenges. And it's an amazing community that you get to interact with every day. Like I said, you've got Mark and me by your side every step of the way. Then we've got a weekly webinar. So the webinar is going to set up each week as we go into train. So each week has a specific theme to it. So the first week is all about first strike, where we go into the serve +1, the return +1, as we know is 70% of the points, how we're going to train those tactics. And then as we get into later weeks, we review what happened the week before, we answer any questions that you have, and we guide you through into the next week. So it's literally like having a super team in your corner every step of the way. We've also got, as we mentioned, this is also in the realm of personal development. So we've got interviews with world-class leaders. We've got a Tony Robbins master trainer interview, which is amazing. Mark's Kung Fu master, Sifu Matthew, who studied
different class.
Just amazing. And these interviews are like peeling back layers of an onion. You know, every time you watch one, you learn something that you've heard before, but you learn something new because you've become a different player and a different person. What else? Did I miss anything, Mark?
We do doubles as well. Just so, although we will talk about the singles, we have a specific doubles version, and we do train doubles like nobody trains doubles. And when you go to our doubles thing and now watch ATP doubles players, you will see possibly for the first time what they do that's so different. And now you can do the same thing. So it's cool. And you were always a good doubles player, and I'm putting words into your mouth, having done the doubles training, you've become the dominator on court. True? Yes?
Yeah, unless I'm playing with my wife, and then it's always yes, dear. Because I want to sleep in the bed, not on the couch.
Cool.
What else to say? Oh, yeah, most important thing. So probably the coolest part is Mark and I are jointly accountable with you. So yes, this accountability factor is huge because we're there with you every step of the way. We're going to see what you're doing in the training on the videos. So this really is for people who are committed to taking their game to new heights and gaining an edge on their opponents quickly, as in like 30 days. And we all know that you can't improve, you know, your tennis game in a short amount of time, right? So we are jointly accountable, which means that you invest in this program and you train with Mark and me, and you go through the process, you do that, you show up to the videos. And if at the end of 30 days, you haven't rewired the way that you think about matches and you aren't quickly beating the players that you've always lost to, we give you your money back with no questions asked. And we have not had a single person do that yet. And it's because the training really works. So, and tying it to the, you know, the hardest metric, which is wins and losses. So if you'd like to do this with us, if you'd like to actually train with us, the investment is $497, and that includes everything. So you get the 72 plus micro training videos dripped over 30 days. You get access to me, Mark, Robert, Dr. Boynton, every step of the way in a WhatsApp group. You get the weekly webinars, but more importantly, you get a clear-cut plan to go out and execute every day, and you'll have clarity and the ability to execute in those big moments under pressure and start beating people that you've always narrowly lost to. So, yep, Mark?
Do we have a payment plan, Robert? Ramon?
Yes. So if the investment up front is a challenge for you, but you'd like to do the program, just email me. I'll put it down in the chat. And if you're interested in doing this with us, because we didn't get the sales page up in time, just give me shoot me an email and we'll get you squared away. With that, sorry, Mark?
Next trainings, we've got 2 courses coming up, yes?
Yeah, so we've got a kickoff webinar tomorrow for people that have already signed up, and the first official training webinar. So that's sort of complimentary. If you'd like to jump in, you can hop on it tomorrow. And the first official week 1 webinar will be in 2 weeks' time, which will be August 1st, Sunday, August 1st. So this all sounds great, probably, but you may wonder, have people actually gotten results with this. And what I'd like to do for you is just share my screen and play a couple of short testimonials for you, so you see that we're not full of beans. So this is Tanya, who started tennis at 59, has played 2 years, and is already a 3.5 player.
Wheelhouse. I mean, I had seen, I have probably every tennis course ever created. So when I say this is the best, it is no joke.
Wow, Tanya.
So then we've got Dr. Boynton, who we mentioned earlier, and this was huge for her because, as we said, she was away from tennis for 27 years, and raised a kid, raised a family, and well, you'll hear it.
I was a bit of a mental midget, but I knew I had the skills because of the OR. I could focus in the OR and all this stuff. And Mark and Robert, I think the key thing that they did for me was they changed my story. Because my story was, I can't be as good as they are because I took tennis up so late in life. And then they just said those are just words. And so I had these like emotional chains, and they kind of like busted me out of them. And I think I won that. The girl didn't know what hit her in the final. I mean, it was hilarious. And I was very proud of myself for, managing to stick with it. And I won like 2 in love or something. Like I just.
That's pretty amazing. And then we've got Matt. I've never heard this actually said before, but he was always very sort of jumbled, in his matches. He'd be unclear, he'd be nervous and thinking, and here's what he has to say.
It's much more soothing. I don't know if that's the right word. Yep. To say, okay, either I'm executing it well or I'm not, but this is the plan, this is the purpose. And as opposed to, okay, how am I playing versus how the opponent's playing, and all these other thoughts. It's so much quieter in my head. I love it. Now when I watch the points, it's fascinating to me to see the patterns and how I watch it. And then in playing, like the handful of matches I've played in the last 2 weeks, kind of like what you said, it's different, and it's very liberating to be like, okay, I have a plan, and I'm playing to targets, and
So we got loads more of these guys, but we would love for you to experience this with us and really go through the training, because it is game changing. It's life changing. It can change the way you think about yourself as a tennis player. And yes, if you follow the training, you will get predictable results, because most people are doing what everybody else is doing, which is hitting loads of balls from the baseline and not really thinking about things in a very specific way and leveraging that 80-20 that we talked about. So if you'd like to join us, shoot me an email. I think I put it in the chat. If I haven't, Ryan's in. Awesome, Ryan. Ramon at thewinningformula.tennis. Just drop me an email. Let me know, and we will get you signed up and squared away. So first webinar tomorrow, kickoff webinar in 2 weeks' time. And again, I just really want to thank you for being on the call.
Yeah.
With us today. We love doing this. And if there's anything that we can do to help you, let us know, and we'd be happy to do that for you. Mark, anything to say?
No, just to echo. Thanks for spending your valuable time with us. A, we hope you had some enjoyment. B, that you took away a few things that you can execute without us. So cheers.
Bye, guys.